Everybody, it's Steve, and it's time to do my first of a series of videos where I'm going to try to recap the different Splinterlands teams and the best cards on each team and talk about the levels you want to get them for the different leagues. Now, these videos are going to be a little bit longer. I'll try to do them as fast as I can, and I will try to take some time to add some timestamps into them. I do appreciate if you enjoy these videos, if they're helping you learn more about Splinterlands. Subscribe, maybe share, follow me on my Twitter. You can just click on this little link right here to get there because I need to build that following. And I really know that these videos are starting to get a lot more popular than they used to be with the new governance token out. We just had staking launch. Now the token hasn't held that $1 value, but that value was kind of mind-boggling. That would put it as a $3 billion project at the end of the distribution of the token. And for it to get that evaluation so quickly would have been pretty amazing. I'm also going to briefly talk about the rental system in this video. And if you guys want me to recap that on every one, let me know in some of the comments. If you want me to ignore that going forward and just get straight into talking about the teams, we'll do that. Now, the first thing that we need to talk to before we really get into this is the leagues. You need to understand the leagues. If you don't know the leagues, and you're not going to fully understand the rewards. So we're going to go ahead and click in here. So novice is everything at level 1, and you can see if you click here, every card you're only allowed to use at level 1, and there are no season rewards. This is 99 rating, and to be completely honest, even if you have all cards at level 1 and you're just using the free cards, if you play for a little bit, you're not going to be a novice anymore. You're going to win, and you're going to end up going over here to bronze. So I'm not really going to talk about what cards are really good for novice. I'm going to talk about what cards are really good for bronze, and I'm going to focus then in on what is on silver. And then once you get to gold, I'm going to talk to you about kind of what you would have to do to compete here and what levels you need your cards to be. And then there's champion and diamond. Champion and diamond at this point are going to be out of the range for most brand new players unless you have a very large budget. If you want me to talk to you about those leagues, go ahead and join the Discord. There will be an invite in the league. I compete in those leagues. I can tell you the kind of cards you need. I just don't think it's information for the general audience. I'll maybe touch on those leagues a little bit, or I'll let you know if a card is great at those upper leagues as well or not. But silver is really the area where I think most new players should try to be looking to get, because at silver most of the cards don't have to be leveled up very much. You only have to have your legendaries at level 2, your epics at level 3, your rares at number 4, and your commons at level 5. My point is, this is where you should be trying to get. Now, you might have to start out in bronze, but the big difference why is because if you can get your cards up to this kind of levels where your rares are at 4, your epics are at 3, your legendaries are at 2, your commons are at 5, you can consistently be getting a lot more rewards chest per daily quest, and your season's rewards are going to be a lot higher here. You see, and if you have all your cards here, at the end of the season, sometimes you're going to be able to get into this gold 3 and push yourself up to 22 chests. Now, obviously, if you wanted to be able to get the huge chests you get up here, that requires a pretty big investment. And just to give you an idea, I can get to champion 2. They say my current card collection is worth over $100,000. Now, that's what the cards were worth if I wanted to sell them, and it's a little bit inflated because of the airdrop we're getting right now, that I'm getting a decent amount of tokens. But this is that is what the kind of investment it would take today to get a collection that could get you there. Now, maybe not, maybe about half of that, because you could choose to level up instead of all 6 teams like I have, just focus on 3 teams. And I do suggest you focus on 2 teams at first, and obviously at the very beginning just 1 team. But because there is a random rule set where sometimes you won't be able to use that team, you won't be able to consistently move up the ladder unless you are always getting that team available. So you'll want about 3, and eventually you want all of them if you always want to be able to play and earn and win and constantly try to move up. But you'll have to decide for yourself what you want to do. There are some teams you can ignore and just decide, like, you can definitely ignore, like, hey, I'm not going to play fire, and I'm not going to play life. I'm going to play the other 4. Or I'm not going to play death because death is kind of weaker at the lower levels, and I'm not going to play maybe I don't know. who would I not play at the beginning? I'll take a look at all the teams and talk about that. So here's at bronze. Now bronze, you will be able to make it into bronze 3 with brand new cards. And the common, this one's kind of nice because the legendaries stay at level 1, the epics at level 2, rares at level 2, and commons at level 3. And if you get everything to level your rares to 2, epics to 2, and commons to 3, and then rent a few legendary cards to make this team more powerful, my guess is if you can get your power to 15,000 overall with the cards that you have, you'll be able to go ahead and sneak into silver and play a little bit at the end of each season in the silver league. But you'll be stuck in silver 3. You're not going to get enough to power this 40,000 unless you start leveling these cards up to these levels, just so you know. Okay, so now that we've talked about the leagues, and I know that was hardly 5 minutes, I told you these videos are going to be a little bit longer, but I'll have a timestamp so you can jump straight to the team review when the team review starts. We're going to start off here with talking about Fire and the Fire team. And I'm currently on the card rental market, so you can get a quick idea of how much you would have to pay per day to rent these summoners if you didn't want to buy the summoners. And obviously, there is no reason for you to really rent them at level 1, so I'm going to move these to level 2 with a caveat that you need to understand. Okay, so one of the things that you'll see, there's not a lot in the rental system at level 2, but there are a lot at level 1. This is something that the community hopefully will start to fix, and some people will take down some of their level 1s and then turn them into level 2s. Now, at level 1, the only summoner that you might be looking to rent are the ones that you do not get for free, and that is really, at this point, I believe, you might not get Malric, and you definitely don't get these ones. Now, if you want to absolutely dominate bronze, you could rent a Jotun Zaku. Anybody who doesn't have one and you use him, you will win those matches almost every single time. Same thing with this one, but these cards do cost a decent amount of money. 94 cents a day, 72 cents a day. So you're going to be giving back some of your earnings to potentially a lot of your earnings just for using these cards. And while it may be frustrating to get beat down by these guys, they are not necessarily worth renting unless you just want to try them out, see how they work, and then think about powering them up. Now, to compete in the upper leagues, once you are trying to get into the higher silver leagues or the higher gold leagues, you do need these cards at higher levels to really compete and win on a consistent basis. But if you have the time to play more, having a Malric or having a Pyre is really worth it. And it's obvious to see summoners are the cards that you might just have to go ahead and look into buying. So let's go from the rental market over to the buy market. As you can see in the buy market, the cheapest summoner to get is going to be the newest one, the Pyre summoner. Now, the +1 speed is a pretty good ability, but it's not as good in lower levels. The +1 attack, or any of the summoners that do a modifier to your team's attack base, whether it be melee, magic, or ranged, are the best summoners in the beginning of the game for the lower price. The reason of that is because they make your team better, and you can make your team to make to go ahead and make sure that every monster gets that bonus, or most monsters get those bonuses. So this is why you would be able to want them, as opposed to a quick example is Bortus is -1 magic at low level. A lot of magic monsters only have 1 magic. So unless he's canceling out Aldrich, who's giving them an extra magic, his ability might not even do anything to the opposing team, because they might only have 1 or 2 mages on their team that only have 1 or 2 magic attack, and so you, at best, maybe they have 1 monster with 2 at the lower levels, and so you lower the magic attack of 1 monster, as opposed to with a Malric, you can give every single monster on your team an attack bonus possibly, and the Fire team can really do that because they have plenty of monsters with melee abilities that can attack from different positions. That's one of their strengths, and as we get into the monsters, we'll start to talk about that. So on the summoners, if you want to spend the money, these guys are really strong. As you can see, they both give a +1 attack. This one gives extra life and blast, which is really just dominant at the lower levels. And the archer +1 does work pretty well on the Fire team now. They have some good archers that were introduced to go with Jotun. Then we're also going to talk here. This is the beta summoner. He gives the speed and a -1 health. So this is kind of an interesting combo, but it makes your monsters can make your monsters very fast, and the Fire team is already very fast. This monster, nobody really likes him. Piercing doesn't seem to matter that much, But if you just want to get a level 2 summoner and you don't want to invest a lot of money, you could go ahead and go for this card because it is the cheapest of the summoners out here at only $1.75. We'll go ahead and talk about leveling up a summoner really quick. You can just go to the stats. As you can see, you need 5 of them to get to level 2 on a rare, on Pyre. But I think on Malric, you only need 3. So think about that when you look at the price given. He's expensive right now. Let's see, the cheapest single card is $30. So you would need, oh, here you go. There's a couple level 3s for sale that already have 5 cards put into them for like $124. That would get you one to level 3. Level 3, let me go back here. Leagues. Is silver level 3? No, see, silver's level 4. So I wouldn't really look to buy a level 3. You always want to look at the levels of each of the leagues, and you want your cards to be those levels. So on bronze, you only need a level 2, and on silver, you really want a level 4. So don't buy a level 3 if that isn't going to necessarily, unless it's really just the best deal out there on the card. But if you can get one that's level 4, or just go ahead and spend less money and put one at level 2 by just buying these ones right here. For this one's kind of interesting because you're only paying $25 per card. And obviously, if you have the money to buy him at max level where you're only paying $5 per card, you can. But, this is really up to you because this is a pretty decent investment into the game. That would then allow you to compete in the maximum league, and you'd pay much less per card, but you would have to be willing to put up a big investment and then start earning it back. That's the difference with Splinterlands. It is kind of an invest in almost a DeFi-ish sense that you have to invest the money so you can play the game, so you can win the rewards. And then there's a bit of a rolling of the dice when you open those chests, because you could open one gold legendary card that is worth quite a bit of money and make your investment back very fast. And you're going to have ebbs and flows at those top levels where you get amazing rewards and you get not so amazing rewards. That's just the way that this works. Okay, let's go ahead and get to the monsters now on the fire team. So the first thing that you're going to notice about the fire team is they really have 2 themes that you can kind of go. If you use Malric or, what's his name really quick? I don't have Play-Doh Emberstorm. If you lose our Emberstorm, you're going to be trying to do attack monsters that can attack from multiple positions, or you're going to be trying to do the ranged monsters that can do ranged attack from different positions. Even though they have a couple really good mages, you're never really going to be going a full mage team with the fire team, or use them in a situation where you can't use melee monsters or you can't use ranged monsters, because their really powerful cards are going to be at ranged monsters. So one of the things that's a little annoying, I can't really kind of show you the cards at any level I want. Well, maybe I can. Let's see if I can show you cards at level 2. Okay, so these are the cards that would be at level 2. You can get an idea right now for how much they cost just by looking through. They're not cheap, anymore. Sorry that at this point the cards are pretty expensive, but I'll talk about the ones that are really good and can be used together to really, really, compete and win. So one of the things to note here, legendary cards at level 2, you wouldn't need one of these at level 2. You'd only need one of these at level 1 to compete in early bronze. And even in early silver, you could probably leave these cards at level 1 until later. I wouldn't worry about Elemental Phoenix at this point, because this card doesn't get good until you level it up. Malric, on the other hand, is a good one to have, and the same thing for Lord of Fire. Not really important unless you're going to level him up. These cards have to get their further stats before they become really good. But as you can see, this one already has 4 attack, 3 speed, 13 health, and taunt. So he's a really decent card to have. But if you're not going to spend $62 to have this tank, what are the other options for your tank on this team? In the lower levels, let me just go ahead and move this to level 2. You're going to really be looking at, hopefully there's one for sale. See, there's not one for sale, so I have to leave them on level 1 and then click on them, which is going to make this take a little while longer. But that's okay, because we do want to see all the cards. So Cerberus is probably going to be your main tank that you're going to want to use, because he has a self-heal right away, And if you get him to level 2, he has 6 HP. So this is where you'd want him to be to compete in bronze and maybe to get him into silver. Now, you're not going to really want to have a level 3 Cerberus because, well, you could go to level 3 if you have a summoner who's level 3 and you'll be able to compete a little bit more. And even though I would say that normally you don't really want to aim to be at level 3 for too much, you want to get to 4 so you can really compete in the top of silver, he gets an extra attack at 3. And that extra attack can be a big deal because that can be the difference between doing 2 damage to a shielded monster instead of 1 damage to a shielding monster. And it can be the difference between on a -1 attack, you actually still dealing damage. So this one is one of the main tanks that I would talk about. The ones that you can kind of ignore, the Pit Ogre. Not a lot of people like to use him. He's slow. He was only really good in reversed speed games, but the overall fire team tends to be a little bit faster. So you don't usually aim to use them in reverse speed necessarily. And even if you were, you'd use Living Lava. And Living Lava is one of the best tanks in the beginning, even though he's relatively slow, because he has a lot of attack and he can be used with Pyre, who speeds him up to make his speed a little bit decent. Or in a reverse speed game, if you have a Malric, you can play him and he's gonna hit first, and he has a shield. He has a shield right away, and if you get him to level 2, which only takes 5 cards, then he gets a 7th HP, and he's shielded with 3 attack and 7 HP. One of the things you'll notice for the lower leagues, if you start to pay attention to this, is Untamed cards tend to have a little bit higher stats because they have a level up tree that really gives them, instead of a lot of increase to stat points, increase to abilities, whereas alpha and beta cards tend to have some of their abilities right away, not get more but get much stronger as they level up. So the main tank that I would use if you're going to be in silver is I would do a combination of Living Lava, Cerberus. I wouldn't really worry about the Serpentine Soldier because his HP is too low, even though he's fast at low levels and has a shield. But because if you can get him cheaper, the Lava, for me, it will end up being a better tank for you. And then some of the other cards at the lower level that you're going to want to target are some of the archers that do at least 2 damage and do it early. So we're talking about here the Pyromancer, the Spark Pixies, the Fire Elemental. These are all the beta the Untamed cards, so they're cheaper, so it's nice. As you can see, even at level 1, they all have 2 attack. Now, so you can use these cards at level 1, and they'll still be pretty competitive, but if you get them to level 2, it'll give them a little perk that can make them a tiny bit better. Now, if you have a Malric and you want to be using more melee type monsters, the ones that you're going to aim for there are going to be the Finish Rage, because on a higher mana match or even a lower-ish mana match, you can put him either behind Cerberus or behind the Living Lava, and now you have a fast secondary tank with a lot of HP. And if you're using Malric, you're going to be giving him a 3rd attack very quickly. And as you can see, he's only $1, so this is a really good card to use. Also, the Serpentine Spy is a great card because he's a melee monster that can attack from any position. He does have kind of low life, so you have to look out for somebody else having a faster Serpentine Spy killing him off. But one of the tricks you can use is you put the Pixie in front of him, because the Pixie flies with high speed, and so it has a better chance of being missed. And then if you run into somebody else playing the Serpentine Spy, your Spy will kill their Spy, and maybe your Pixie will die, but your Serpentine Spy will live. If you want, the Giant Rock isn't a terrible card, but it's not really needed, because at 5 cost, in most of the time, unless the mana is very low, you can just use Finis, and you're not going to end up using this card. That's why this card, even though it's a beta card, it's still relatively cheap. Some of the other cards that are more useful than people think they are, you want to have one of these. And the reason you want to have a Cobalt Bruiser, because if you play any match like Super Sneak or Monsters Mayhem, where melee monsters can attack from anywhere, if you're having one of these in your repertoire, especially because you can pick them up for $0.25, and you can level him up to level 3 very easily as a common for not very much money, and you get him to level 3, he'll have 4 life, 2 attack, and 3 speed. If you get him to level 4 or 5, he gets 3 attack for 3 mana. So it's a very attack to mana card, and then he can go ahead and hit the board and really just do a lot of damage from a super sneak position or from a monster mayhem position. Another card that's good in that mode is in any of those modes that is relatively cheap, that's low cost, is the ant miners, because the scavenge ability will allow him to go ahead and get some extra HPs, and if you put him in the right position, he can be very useful. Now, some of the cards at low level that you kind of want to ignore are the flame monkey, because he's not important until he gets his repair skill, and he doesn't get his repair skill until here, so at level 5. Now, if you are going to be competing in silver, this repair skill can be very good to get, because then you can sit him behind your living lava and he'll repair his armor. So that's not a bad card to get, but not unless you're going to get it to level 5. There is really no reason to have it below then, because you can get some other cards that have a 1 cost from the neutral team. Should probably talk about the neutral team while I'm with these, but I didn't want them to muck up the board. But basically, that's a card that you can ignore. One of the other cards that isn't very good at low levels is, let's see, all the other cards serve their purposes, so you're really just going to want to kind of look at the cost. Like, see here, you got 2 attack with 5 life, 3 speed, but it costs $50 to get a fire demon, whereas you can get a very, very similar card here with 2 attack, a little bit slower, for $350. So this is where you're kind of going to be comparing your team and trying to figure out the prices. This one here is a really good one for high mana attackers, even though he's pretty slow, because he's only 86 cents. And if you level him up, he does go ahead and get some more speed. So at these higher levels, you can get an additional speed. And he is a good person to have on your team in higher matches to put in place to take hits from other team snipers, because he won't die really quickly. Now, he won't dodge, so that can be kind of annoying. But think about it, in a higher mana match, you can have a shielded guy with 6 or 7 life, followed up by a guy with 8 or 9 life, followed up by a guy with 8 life, and it's going to take them a little while to get through those attackers. Now, that's a high mana match. But then you can put some of these other guys behind them, the range guys that do 2 and 2 and 2, and hopefully these guys can, and this one doing 3, and everyone attacking, they can go ahead and take out that front row. I really will be looking for some feedback on this video to kind of get an idea if this is kind of what you guys want to know. There's really just so many cards, and it's hard to go over everything. Really, when you're building your team as a new player, you're going to have to look at cost of card to ability, and you're going to have to think of a theme for what you want your team to do, because your team either needs to be all snipers, you want to attack the same position is one of the things I want to say. You don't want to build a team where 2 of your monsters attack the front row position, 1 sniper attacks the sniper position, and 1 sneak monster is attacking the sneak position. That's not what you want to do. Too much of your fire is not focused to killing 1 monster, and you might end up in a situation where you can't kill anybody because you're not doing enough damage to any 1 monster quick enough. So you want to focus everything on the front row or everything on the sneak position except for your front row tank, or run a lot of snipers. The one exception to that rule, you could use 1 sneak monster or one monster with the opportunity skill that's going to go hunt out the lowest life monster, or 1 sneak monster to go ahead and hopefully take out a back row monster. If they throw something at the back row, it can take out. But that's only really if there's nothing else you can play. If there's no other ranged monster that you can fit on the board because you're down to 2 mana and you've already used, the imp. But like in general, what I'm saying here is if you're playing and everyone's attacking the front row and you have 2 mana left, put out an imp bowman, not a kobold miner, or put out a goblin fireball thrower over a kobold miner, because that way everyone is attacking the front row and you don't have to worry about you doing 1 random damage to a back row monster. What else do I want to say about the fire team? So now I'll just talk to them a little bit more in general. So the fire team is really a team that in the lower levels is underestimated, and a lot of people ignore them, but they're not the strongest unless you get the right cards. They do tend to need Zaku to be very, very powerful, or Malric can do okay. But Pyre is better than some people think, because Pyre can speed up a team that is already pretty fast, and attacking first is one of the most important things in this game, because if your monster attacks first, it can kill their monster before it can even attack. And that is the thing that the fire team is better at doing than a lot of people give them credit for. Because if you look at this monster here with 3 speed, it's already going to be sitting here at 4 speed, and that's a pretty decent level. But then you look at some of the other monsters that can attack from the back. You got a 4 speed that becomes a 5 that becomes a 6. You have a 5 that becomes a 6 with Pyre. So there, and then you have a 3 that becomes a 4. So you could have all, like, the slowest monster on your team having 4 speed, and there's a good chance, you know, that if you go hit for 2, hit for 2, hit for 2, and then have this guy attack after those people all go and weaken somebody, that he's going to go ahead and pound into them. So one of the best lineups that I can see, a team that you could just play over and over again that would be pretty strong, would be Pyre, where you aim to do this guy with this guy, this card, and this card. And then you would either have Finishes Rage, or I would go ahead and pick up Magma Troll. And the Magma Troll would just be in the second position as a cheap card that you could definitely buy and level up to like the highest level that you can need for that team. And he can just be there when you don't have enough mana to use the Finish Rage, because you're going to be wanting to use these 3 cards in a combination for absolute positive. And then you don't need the Beetle Queen. Is a card that you only need to invest in if you're going to play it at a high level, because it's not useful till it can heal, and it can't heal till level 5. So if you're aiming to be a top silver player, then you go ahead and get one of these, but you have to get it to level 5. Pretty much a useless card before it gets to level 5. It only does 1 magic damage on a team that doesn't really up their magic damage. The same thing with Zaron. He's an interesting card, but only in Equalizer, because then you could throw him on the board. He'd start off with a lot of life, and then he'd mana leech, life leech people, and but he's an expensive card. You can get 2 damage in a much cheaper way. Right here, even though this one cost 8, it's an okay one. But see, these ones are doing 2 damage. It's range damage instead of magic, so it's not quite as powerful. But see, as you can see, there's just no other, there's no mage combo to be had here. This one doesn't do that much damage. This one doesn't do that much damage. This one doesn't do that much damage, and this one doesn't, and that one doesn't. And none of the summoners really make the mages any better. So I would kind of not worry about leveling up the mages or getting the mages. They're pretty expensive cards. So you can definitely build fire to either use Pyre or use Malric, or even use the guy that gives people piercing if you're really, really on a budget, and then just really aim to get yourself, maybe a Cerberus if you're going to spend a little money, or go ahead and just go with Living Lava, backed up here with Spark Pixies, Fire Elemental. Make sure you get your Serpentine Sky up to a little decent level. Then go into the rewards cards that are cheaper. Make sure you have a Finishes Rage. Make sure you have... if you don't want to go Etten Spearman because you don't like this 1 speed because you might be missing too often, you can go this card. It does less damage, but you can throw it at the end, and the Last Stand ability is kind of a fun one to play with. I haven't used this enough at low level, but I feel like if you had this card and you put it at level 2, so it had 9 HP and 1 magic, and then it would probably Last Stand up to even more HP and an additional magic and an additional speed. It wouldn't be a bad card to use instead of this one in the higher mana matches, and he's a little bit cheaper. As far as the cheap monsters, I would make sure that you get a Goblin Fireballer. He's a good one to have on the team if you're going to be constantly they're built to attack the front row. Ant Miners is not a bad card to have to throw in, and the Cobalt Bruiser basically to play in Super Sneak and Monster Mayhem games. This tank here, this giant one here, He could be one you'd want to at least have on your team for like 99 mana matches, because it would give you a big card to play, and in 99 mana matches you need big cards to play, and he's really cheap. This one here you could get just because he's so cheap, and he can be a fill-in when you don't have the extra 3 mana to put Finis on the board, but you could skip him early on if you want to. Let's see, who else might you want? And maybe you could get this one if you were interested in having a 9-cost card, but not super important, not super cheap. You would only play him in melee monsters can attack from anywhere, or in Super Sneak, because he will weaken the other teams. But it's not a lot of play games where you would put him on the board, because not only does it need to be that format, it needs to be that format and high mana. Let's see. Yeah, I think that really goes over what I would be aiming to do. Those are the cards I would aim to get and level up and use. If you're going to be spending the extra money to get anything, I would go here to the Pyromancer is a pretty strong card. And then General. The General is a really, really good card to have. But only if you have Zaku. So if you're spending the money on the Zaku, then you can go ahead and get the Sniper. Sniper positions with Zaku are really good because when they hit the Sniper, and they'll bounce, and the damage will bounce and hit usually at least 2 other monsters. So that's a really that's a reason why he's so valuable. He teams up with Zaku in a really good way. Yeah, I think I'm going to end it there. You know, we're at 30 minutes. I've been talking about the fire team for a lot longer than I meant to. It's going to be a longer video, so hopefully you enjoy. And go ahead and give me some critiques. Let me know what else I should be talking about, what else I should be doing. In general, just as a quick ranking in the bronze and silver levels, I would say the fire is one of the weaker teams. I started with them first because I just figured they were the first team on the board, and I wanted to get them done, but I also wanted to see how this went and get some feedback from the community on what else I need to talk about. And then I will go into who I think are the most powerful teams for bronze once I get a good feel for doing this. Just so you know ahead of time, the most powerful teams, in my opinion, for bronze and silver are green, white, and blue. And then the weaker teams are fire, death, and dragon. Really just because dragon, they don't really have a whole team. They have to combo with somebody. So, you know, they're the least important unless you were going to spend the money to go ahead and get them. Then they're some of the best teams that you can make, but they're very expensive cards. Thanks, everybody. Bye.